I'm in Monterey, California at the Sony Kando event. And this is the second Kando event they've had, and I'm sitting here with Chris Burkard.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thanks so
Thank
much
you
for
very
having
much.
me. Yeah.
You know, Chris is a longtime landscape photographer, and I had the opportunity to sit down with him at this event, and I couldn't pass it up. And we're going to talk a little bit about landscape photography, Sony cameras, how we've done things. He and I have visited many of the same places numerous times in our world travels, and talk a little bit about what landscape photographers are facing these days when they're out in the landscape.
Yeah, sort of a state of the union, I guess.
Yeah, state of the union. So where's the last place you've been?
Good question. I just most recently got home, which I'm the most excited about. I live only about 2.5 hours from here in Pismo Beach, California. But this year, since January, I've been in Vancouver. I went to South Island, New Zealand twice. I went to Hokkaido, Japan. I went to Patagonia. I went to, starting to blank, Alaska. And I went to the Aleutian Islands.
Oh, God, they're all beautiful places. I'm doing Hokkaido next January, I believe it is. New Zealand is still.
Yeah.
There is something about New Zealand.
And it's the culture too. It's the people.
Oh,
it's just everything about it. I feel like the landscape itself. It's as if you had California stayed green all year long. I'm mind blown by it. There's so many places to go. A lot of iconic places. Yeah.
There's one place I always go there is Onslow Burn. I don't know if you've ever flown into Onslow Burn. You have to take a helicopter.
Heard, but I haven't. Yeah.
Just like hundreds of waterfalls coming off a glacier, thousands of feet high. It's like, who can invent this stuff?
Yeah.
This stuff you see in storybooks.
And that's kind of what it feels like. It's like someone designed this whole place like a set.
It's just amazing. And there's a lot of amazing places in the world. And before we get into more amazing places, let's talk hardware for a second. Let the hardware geeky part of our things
always,
come
yeah, for
out.
sure.
And I was asking Chris what he shot with before, and I'm going to let him kind of give his little story. But he's been with Sony for quite a while. But you started with.
Yeah, I mean, I started like most photographers. I think I was like shooting Canon this 10, 12 years ago. And then I migrated over to Nikon, and then I became a really early adopter to the Sony system. Mirrorless intrigued me, and I was in many ways scorned by my colleagues, and my editors were like, what are these files? What are you doing? And I really just fell in love with the size and the scale of what I was being able to produce, like how big these prints could be made. The NEX7 was kind of my workhorse back in the day. It was the camera that I shot a lot of my favorite work with, and at a time there was even a time where I was shooting kind of like Nikon, Sony, and then I just went all in. And now, yeah, I'm a dedicated Sony user. A7 R3 is my go-to camera.
Beautiful.
The A9 when I'm shooting action sports, and then the A7S has also been a critical camera for my low light work, which I've been able to film with, and just it's an amazing piece of technology. Really, at that point in my career, I was traveling to these places where I needed to be light, efficient, and fast. Sometimes we were camping, and I needed something small, and then the mirrorless system, it really caught my eye. And there was even a time where I was using partly Sony, partly Nikon, but I switched completely over to the Sony system, and I just sold everything else I owned. And the A7R3 has been just it's my go-to. It's my workhorse. There's never been a camera for me. Of course, as the system progressed, there was always like little woes and problems, but the R3 just it solved every issue that I had, and the A9 still my go-to for action sports. But the A7S, I'd say in terms of like the camera that has I have a soft spot for. That camera for me was a game changer because it allowed me to start shooting stuff that I never thought possible. We made a film about surfing under the northern lights, and that was the camera that we used. It was incredible. I was really blown away.
That A7S is like seeing in the dark. It's like at 8 carats or something. Yeah. I remember when they first showed it to me.
Yeah, exactly.
They took us into a dark room. So what are we looking at? Well, look at the camera and you'll see.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really?
Wow.
I mean, like there's one tiny little light in the room, and it was like
so crazy.
Yeah, I think that was an awareness of where this whole digital and sensor and mirrorless thing was going.
It was an eye opener. It was kind of like and I'm sure that technology soon they're going to outdo it. They're going to make it better. But it's just like at the point you're like, wow, like this is the future, really. Like this is why we shoot these cameras,
So, the A9's got it licked, and I mean, I love that. And then I put, like you, the A7 III, and I print on a 9900 Epson printer. And I've done 44 by 77 inch prints, even from the 24 megapixel A9 file, and it just freaking amazing.
Yeah, it really is. The pixel depth is and the color, basically like just the way that pixel interprets color is what is really, I mean, I would say in some ways the A9 sensor is one of the best ones that they've been able to come out with. Like, it's really impressive.
And you know Sony's got other things up their sleeve. I mean, you know,
Sony's kind of always gone a little rogue. They've always been a little like, to me, like they're not following this traditional model. They're just like, yeah, we're going to come out with a new camera, and then we're going to come out with another one. And it's like all of a sudden, you're not even expecting a release. There's no like rhyme or reason. There's no like every 1.5 years. It's like they've just kind of popped stuff out of nowhere, and it's kind of been mind-blowing to where it's made me really respect them, because it's not like they're withholding in technology, you know, until the right, you know, marketing time. They're just putting it out there, and I feel like people have really appreciated that.
well, you know, they're aiming to be the #1 guy, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. So we'll see. But let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your photography, how you got into it. You've made quite a name for yourself, a lot through social media. I think you've done a super job of that, but your images are tremendously great images, and you've done some amazing projects. So how did you get into all this? You know, did you jump into photography as a career, or did you switch? What happened? You got a story. Reader's Digest version.
Probably too long of a story for that we have today, but ultimately I wish that there was some quick, easy, pivotal moment that made life so simple. But to be honest, I never even traveled when I grew up. I grew up in a really small town, single parent home. You know, photography for me was just something fun. The beach was my first canvas, and it was in many ways like a babysitter, I guess you could say. So I would spend my days, hours there, and ultimately, when I picked up a camera, and it was this just great expression for creativity, and it was a kind of a release and outlet for me. I realized at the same kind of pivotal moment, I was like, this could be my ticket out of here. This could be my ticket to see the world. Because I didn't want, I mean, as a young kid who never traveled, that's all I wanted. I wanted to see the world outside the politics of the dinner table. And I wanted to know what was out there. And I used to flip through magazines and just, you know, dream about these places. So I did like any intelligent 19-year-old would do, and I quit my job, and I quit school, and I pursued photography. And I'll tell you what, it sucked for a long time. I mean, it was like shooting the worst stuff you could ever imagine. I would run up to surfers on the beach, and I would, you know, out of breath, and I'd be like, I shot a picture of you. You want to buy it on a CD, you know, to make like $10 to fill my gas tank. And so there was a lot of years of living in my car below poverty level and eating very, you know, questionable Mexican food and just surviving. But I thrive in those scenarios, and those are the ones that make me feel the most humbled, because I know what I had to do, what I was capable of doing to get to where I am now.
I think a lot of us maybe have somewhat the same stories, but first off, I think photography is humbling, and you know, it is the old starving artist story that I know very few photographers that started off at the top. But,
right, yeah.
You know,
and you never appreciate it if you do.
No, and the fact that you remember what it's like to, you know, sleep in the back seat of your car, and you know, wear the same clothes for a week, and you know, go through all the things just because you believe in what you're doing.
Right.
And it's just tremendous. For me, you know, I find photography to be, not at this point, because like yourself, I'm doing pretty damn well in it, but it's also great therapy.
Yeah,
there is nothing better, would you agree, than going out and taking a picture. You take all the stress and all the crap, and you know, it just releases things.
I mean,
you know?
especially after you put in the time to plan and think about it, and you know, consider all, you know, wait, what, why, what, you know, all these things that drive you to go do it. I think it's incredibly fulfilling. There's no greater sense of accomplishment really when all the factors come together. And like yourself, you're dealing with the weather and you know, timing and you know, the tides, the wind, the sea, the sky. There's so many things that come together to create what I would feel is to be an iconic image, and that's really it truly is. It's an experience I'm grateful to have.
It's interesting as we look at the world today, and you do workshops, I do workshops, and there's a tremendous interest, specifically with the cameras that are coming out today, because they're easy to use, and it's very hard not to take a good picture.
The barrier of entry is way easier now than it was. For sure.
But as a result, you know, and the price point's not too bad to get into either. You know, consider you get a Sony A7R III for what, $3,400, and buy a few lenses, and you can be well outfitted. And you're watching how many people enjoy going out to do the landscape. To me, it's been rewarding, but it's also been disappointing.
How's that?
The more and more I go out, the more and more people I run into putting their tripods in the same holes. I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but we've gone to a lot of iconic locations, and you can go to the bridge on Lofoten and find 50 people lined up on the bridge taking the same picture at the same time you are, day in and day out.
You know what I found is that if you use a camera to make a living, that's noble. If you use a camera to raise a family, it's amazing. But at a certain point, I think that all those things are going to become unfulfilling, and I feel like we both know that we use a camera to hopefully inspire people and to hopefully push them to seek out experiences that only those of us who've been lucky enough to have. And so I go back and forth because I feel like, well, I'm taking pictures to hopefully inspire people to see these places, but then when I see them there, I can't really get upset because this is, because how much better is it that they're there, even if their tripods are overlapping each other? They're there experiencing nature as opposed to being inside their house playing video games.
Yeah,
and I think that's a part of what the world needs. It needs more outdoor experiences, and if photography is people's entry point to the outdoors, then I feel like I'm grateful to share that space with them.
That's great, because so many people take a negative viewpoint of it. I like the same thing, but what I've discovered, and I'm a good friend of Art Wolf's, and he and I do a lot of workshops together, and one of the things that he showed me, and it's just become fascinating, is finding the photograph in the broad landscape.
Right.
The shot that if you zoom in and isolate it, you might even have an abstract, but now you've got the iconic picture, but you also got something totally different and new. So it's about seeing also.
Yeah. And I think that something to speak to Art, and his expertise and yours as well, is like the thing is, in the beginning, it wasn't. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the beginning, wasn't it all about the hunt? Wasn't it all about the idea of going out and finding this place? Yeah. And all of a sudden what happened is we all tasted this little bit of success, and then we kind of want to go back there and we want to find the same experience. And that's kind of the definition of crazy, is going to doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And that's the beauty, is that nowadays, although some of these places have been seen and they've been explored and they've been shot to death, it's like I still enjoy going and looking for new places and places that excite me, just like Iceland did, 10 years ago or whatever. And for you, 15 years ago, it's like around that next corner or over that next headland, all of a sudden there's a new iconic image waiting for you.
There still are new images, and it's
tons.
It is a lot of people stop at the same places, but
yeah.
The more we explore, I work a lot with Daniel Bergman there, and we've done a lot of roads, even with him living there, and found spots where
he didn't even know about.
Yeah, it's like wow.
And how much more rewarding is that when you're all of a sudden like, wow, here's a new place. Like that's, I feel like when I was starting in photography, that's all I cared about. Everything was new, everything was exciting. And so sometimes I feel like when I'm getting bummed because certain places are a little busy, I'm like, well, wait, this isn't why I picked up a camera anyway. I wanted to experience the new. And so I guess I feel like we can still find that if we're.
Yeah, we can. I've been back to the same places waiting for something iconic to happen.
Right.
Perfect clouds.
Something new, yeah.
And so many times I'm disappointed, and then one time you show up, 60-mile-an-hour winds, 20 below zero, those clouds are blowing across.
Nobody's there, worst day
and
ever,
it's like can't even feel your fingers, and you're getting something
cool,
that you waited years. You came back many times, and you're walking off with something that's different.
I totally agree, and that's what's so unique, is like photography is ultimately that tool where it rewards the patient, and it rewards those who are willing to put in the time, and we're so lucky to be able to have that,
Who's one of the influencers in your style of photography? Do you have a?
I'm sure that you know Michael Fatali. He's an amazing landscape photographer from the southwest of Utah, and he was an early mentor of mine, and a person that I really I was lucky enough to have the chance to train with a little bit, and his keen expertise, but also just his patient eye and his way of making something simple out of something complex was really significant to me. Also Ansel Adams, obviously, for so many people, but I've been lucky enough to actually next week, I'm going to Ansel's archive to look through his archived images. And I've been able to kind of work with the trust a little bit and to have a deeper understanding of his body of work, and that's been really fulfilling to me as a younger photographer.
We did a series with Charlie Kramer. I don't know if you're familiar with Charlie. He's here in San
Yeah,
Jose.
yeah.
And we did the shooting with the masters. Once a year, I go out and find a photographer and spend a week
cool.
with them, and we shoot with them, and then go back and process with them and make
beautiful.
prints. And you know, he was very close to Ansel,
Yeah.
and you know, just amazing kind of guy. I took took a small course with Ansel back. I think it was '74 or something.
Wow, that must have been incredible.
Sitting around and just drinking and talking about photography,
Right.
just kind of like we're doing a lot at this event. And of course, I didn't realize he was going to be so iconic back then. I just, you know, was young in my career, and this was a cool dude, and you know, it was just fun. And I know a lot of people that have done that also, and you just get inspired by the simplicity of the approach that some of these guys have. Now, to kind of wrap things up, one of the things that I think you're well known for, not only in your photography and so forth, but is the way you've managed to get new business and do things. You're kind of a social media icon. Tell us a little bit about that.
Social media to me was never a business plan or scheme, or, you know, I was somebody who actually like kind of thought it was ridiculous at first that I was going to be sharing images before the magazine would publish them. And I remember even like kind of having these discussions with my editors and whatnot. And so I came to social media as a means of telling stories. And it's funny because people, you know, similar to like they want that big break. When was that big break in your career? They want that, like, what's that thing I can do? How do I gain those new followers? And it's hard for me to tell them, like, hey, like, honestly, nothing is ever going to make up for just being a real storyteller. And I feel like that's been the most important thing to me, is learning how to tell deeper stories with more meaning and more purpose. And I've also really tried to learn how to diversify my income, meaning that I'm not just getting stuck in the editorial world or the image licensing or stock photography or commercial photography, which is what I do mostly, commercial photography and directing. And I've tried to learn how to monetize social media in a way that feels authentic to myself, with books and films and things that I create. And I love that we can use your network of people to essentially like share what you're doing, and they support you. I'm lucky enough to have a portion of my business supported by those people.
It's an interesting change in things, you know.
Totally.
You know, back in my day, we had to put cut sheets out and put, you know, display an American showcase and you know, do things totally different. And now, you know, to see part of that, and of course, I'm part of the whole multimedia thing, big website and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you were one of the like first comers to, like, you know, Luminous-Landscape is one of like the premier first websites ever where you could even get a camera review or what's this thing, you know. And that was really huge, because I remember, I mean, there's still articles that I'm referencing now that are like, you know, that were explaining like, oh, what's Chrome versus this?
Know,
and it's awesome.
And some of that stuff is timeless.
It really is. That's important, and I think that's the thing, is like if you can look it up and Google it and reference it still, you know that it's got a lot of value.
It is. It's an amazing time. I don't want to take up more of your time, but I'll tell you what I would like to do.
Yeah.
And of course, it's always alike. Maybe somewhere our paths will cross and we can go out shooting for a couple days.
That.
Bring Michael and, you know, go deeper into the whole experience of seeing and shooting and so forth.
It's always fun to see how people see the world, and that's honestly been the most eye-opening experiences. You meet photographers and you realize that they see the world in a very interesting way, and you learn so much from those people. And so that's what I love about this career, is people I get to meet and interact with.
Well, you know, I like it that you don't mind sharing. I mean, a lot of photographers are, they're secret places.
It's the old guard versus the new guard, and I think that you've helped usher in that era of where, you know, nowadays the photographer that's most valuable is the one that's the most approachable. And I've really tried to always aim to be approachable and to share any knowledge that I've gained.
Done a good job of that. I follow you religiously on Instagram. I'm always amazed when I watch you packing to get off on another adventure, and it's always so cool. So down below will be the links for Chris's site and his Instagram account, and of course the Luminous-Landscape account. Don't forget to subscribe if you've never subscribed before, and if you ring the bell, you'll get notified next time we have something cool. So Chris, thanks very much.
Yeah,
appreciate it. And everybody, I will see you on the Luminous-Landscape.